Scheduling Overview. This video will explain the terminology and concepts of RecStaff's scheduling module.
This is your rec center. This rec center has one facility. Let's call it your rec center. Clever, I know. Your rec center has 2 pools, a rink, a gym, a dance room, weight room, tennis courts, and a party room. It's a pretty happening place. We call the places in your rec center locations.
Let's focus on the pools and the arena.
The pools are part of the aquatics department. Mavis is the manager of the aquatics department, and she has a bunch of staff. She has 5 lifeguards, 2 deck supervisors, 1 pool manager, and 4 swim instructors. We call the jobs people do employee roles. The rink is part of the arena department. Lionel is the manager of the arena department, and he also has a bunch of staff. Sometimes aquatics and the arena have the same staff. That's because some people have more than one role. Sometimes they have more than one role in the same department, and other times they work in lots of departments. Let's take Joe for example. Joe is a deck supervisor and a hockey coach, so he works for both the aquatics department and the arena department. With RecStaff, you would make one schedule type called aquatics for Mavis's group and one schedule type called arena for Lionel's group, and Joe would be part of both schedules. When either Mavis or Lionel are creating schedules, they will be able to see if Joe is working on either of the schedules, so they'll know when they can't have Joe. But when can they have Joe? Let's find out when Joe can work.
To do this, let's go back to Mavis and look at how many shifts she has for a week. The pools are open 7 days a week, but let's just look at one day. We can see that Mavis has lots of shifts on that day. We can also see that her shifts fall naturally within 3 areas of the day, so Mavis creates 3 time blocks to schedule for. Lionel, at the arena, also has to define his time blocks. Lionel's time blocks are different than Mavis's because his hours of operation are different, and so is the breakdown of when his shifts occur. So Mavis has early day and late time blocks, beginning at 6 a.m. and ending at 11 p.m. Whereas Lionel created 2 time blocks and his hours of operations are from 7 to 7. So Lionel has staff working day and night and uses 2 time blocks to manage his staff's availability. We still haven't found out when Joe can work, but we have created the time blocks that he'll use to fill in his availability. Here's the aquatics department availability form, and as you can see, it mirrors the time blocks Mavis created. There are 2 spots where no shifts occur in aquatics, early Saturday and late Sunday. We also need Lionel's time blocks here as well, because Joe works for both schedule types, so he needs to fill out his availability for both. Before Joe goes in and modifies his availability, all time blocks are set to yes. Joe can work whenever a shift is scheduled. If you didn't want staff to define when they could work, you would just leave availability at its default setting of yes, I can work any shift. However, Joe can't work all time blocks, so he simply puts an X on the time blocks he can't work. And that's it. That's all your employees need to do to let you know what shifts they can work. Now, every time you create a shift, the system will search each employee's availability to see if they can work that shift. This brings us to the calendar canvas. The calendar canvas is the backdrop where you create your shifts. It has the days of the week at the top and the hours of the day along the side. Time blocks are used to render what the canvas looks like. Again, with aquatics, we see how the canvas has 2 grayed out areas, which Mavis defined in her time blocks as having no shifts. Now, when you create a shift, the system generates a staff pick list that tells you whether employees can work based on their availability. Let's use Joe again. When Mavis creates a shift during the early time block, the staff pick list looks at each employee's availability for that early time block to see if they can work or not. If you remember, Joe put an X on the early and day shifts on Sundays. So he shows up in the staff pick list with an X beside his name, and Mavis knows not to assign him to this shift. Now she creates a Sunday shift, but again, she cannot assign Joe, for the very same reasons. Then she creates a Tuesday late shift, and Joe can be assigned this shift. And finally, on Wednesday, she creates a late shift, and Joe again has an X denoting that he cannot work a shift during that time block. You can have as many facilities as you require in RecStaff, and you can define multiple locations inside each facility. And then when you create a shift, you can assign staff to locations within the shift. Schedule types are those departments or areas that are managed and scheduled together, such as aquatics or the arena. Employee roles are the jobs staff hold within the facility. Employees can have more than one role, including roles from more than one schedule type. And managers can see when their staff are working shifts on other schedule types. Time blocks are created for each schedule type. They are a breakdown of the day based on when shifts occur. My availability is when staff can work. Staff communicate their availability by filling out which time blocks they can and can't work. The calendar canvas is the backdrop of the visual schedule builder and is where you create your shifts. It is generated based on your time blocks. So if you didn't schedule shifts at all for Saturdays, your calendar canvas would show Saturday as being grayed out. The staff pick list is a list of all your employees. It is how you populate your shifts. Each time you create a shift on the calendar canvas, the staff pick list looks at the time block the shift falls into and then searches each employee's availability, and beside each employee's name you will see whether they can work during the time block or not.